Good morning and Merry Christmas. Welcome to First Congregational Church's online service. My name is Tom, pastor of said church, and we are at the end of Advent, which has been the journey through the anticipation of Christ's arrival into the world as an infant born of Mary in the manger. Now, journeying through this event prepares us and trains us on how to wait for Christ's arrival into our lives today as well. And we all have areas of our life that we would love God to show up in. And Advent helps keep us awake to the ways that God is slowly making things right in our world and how we can participate in our own redemption. Now, Advent is a journey with 5 stops, and we have been on 4 of them: hope, joy, peace, love, and today is redemption. So today we revisit the old stops in a kind of best of collection of the highlights of Advent this year before we explore the concept of redemption at the end. So let's just jump right in and revisit today's topics of hope, joy, peace, and love. So grab yourself a nice cup of something good, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, there's a clinical diagnosis called hypervigilance. It is defined as, quote, a state of increased alertness that leads to extreme sensitivity to your surroundings. So in this state, your nervous system goes into seek out all the dangers mode. This state is helpful when you are in certain situations, but certain circumstances will put your body into this state permanently. A common one is called post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of recovering fundamentalists have this disorder from years of vigilance of their own behavior, fearing that God will smite them at the next misstep. So when our final section says, keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would have not left his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Okay, you can see how this can lead to fearful hyperdiligence. I actually remember a pastor using this verse as a warning to me in my teenage years in a sermon. And he said, don't do anything you wouldn't want to be doing when Christ returns, and don't go anywhere you wouldn't want to be found when Christ returns. Why? Because you could be left behind to endure the great tribulation. No pressure, really. So if y'all ever wonder why post-evangelical culture needs therapy, I submit this story as evidence. Leave it to toxic religion, though, to take something beautiful and transform it into something psychologically harmful. Now, it doesn't mean this. We're all waiting for Christ to arrive in our lives to set something right. Maybe you're waiting on a situation to change, a resource to come, an opportunity to pop up. Now, to stay awake in this passage is not to notice all the dangers and potential missteps you could do that make God angry with you. Instead, it's a vigilance based on hope and not fear. We really don't know when Christ arrives in our lives to make something right. And often it arrives in smaller doses that are so undramatic that we miss it. We are shaped a little each day by these small arrivals that prepare us for a big one. So stay awake and notice a smile from a friend, the beauty of decorations as you drive, the way the light reflects off snow like gems in the morning. It might not be the large arrival that you desire, but it eases the burden of today just a little. So we light candles at Christmas, and we light the candle of hope on the first Sunday of Advent, not because everything is turning out like a Hallmark movie in our life, but because things are not yet turning out like a Hallmark movie in our life. We know that things are not as they should be, and we need to tend the light in the midst of the darkness. This is how we practice being a people of hope, by repeating this act every year in this manner. Advent keeps us rooted and anchored in the practice of hope in the midst of kingdoms coming and going, rising and falling. Advent teaches us to place our hope in something deeper than the rising and falling kingdoms or coming and going pleasures of our day. We are to place them in the things that seem to endure throughout time, the traits that let the image of God shine through us in the midst of turbulence. And Advent celebrates 5 of them: hope, joy, love, peace, and redemption. I hope you join us for the journey, and I hope that you find the goodness of God here amongst you today. Thanks for joining us today. Peace. Now, one of my favorite movies to watch at Christmas time is the Home Alone series, but only the first 2 because the other ones stunk. Now, there's a scene in the second one, Lost in New York, where Kevin is running away from some hotel managers who think him to be a thief. and he escapes by playing loudly a movie scene of a gangster blasting up his adversaries. And the managers actually think that this scene is happening for real, but in the other room, and they dive for cover as the guns go off. And the scene ends with the gangster saying the phrase, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animal." Is one of my favorite scenes. Now, when we hear the next section of this passage in which John the Baptist starts spouting off some threats and insults, it made me think of that scene. "Merry Christmas, you brood of vipers," right? Okay, he didn't say Merry Christmas in the passage, but I like to think it's there. Now, the scene here is that the adult Jesus is about to step into the narrative. He's 30 now, and John is preparing the people for that long anticipated event by dunking them into water to signify cleansing. Maybe it's a lot like taking a shower before you go to the fancy restaurant, I'm not sure. But then some specific characters show up to get baptized, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they receive a rebuke instead of a dunk. What's going on here? Now, we've done some study in the past on who these characters are, so I'll just remind you here that the Pharisees were the religious elite and the Sadducees were the social elite. They considered themselves the gateway to access to God. And the Sadducees had control of the temple in Jerusalem, where the whole religious practice of these people rotated around, and the Pharisees held authority to declare folks clean or unclean based on their interpretations of God's laws. So basically, it was a way of declaring someone's religious worth through a moral interpretation of God's law. And the impossibly high standards of these folks made it difficult for folks without money, status, or education to have access to God and the community. And it was absolutely impossible for those who were disabled, widowed, orphaned, imprisoned, sick, and the like to have access to God at all. It was impossible. So John was making God as accessible as water, where he used to just be held in the temple one time a year for folks to come to. And while these elites established all these hurdles for everyone to jump through, they actually, by doing this, barricaded themselves inside of religious prisons, believing that their experience of their own self-righteousness was an experience of God. So the repentance these elite folks needed to walk through was one that helped them see how they used their religion to hide from God, and shrugged off responsibility of their own darkness onto those unable to competitively compete in religious games. Now, John said that the axe was already cutting that tree down, but he also said that something new could grow from the stump of what was. So the good news that's hidden behind the harsh wording of this passage is that God is as accessible as water. That an axe may have cut down your life to a stump and you're unsure what to do. That tree was just always there, it just grew that way, and now it's gone. But now you can act with more intention and shape it the way you want it to be as it regrows. Your health may have taken a hit, a relationship may have come to a close, a job might be lost, but the opportunity before you now is to cultivate the new growth that is coming out of your life and reshape it into something that is more helpful, joyful, and true to who you are. And Advent tells us that endings are also beginnings, and joy can return and also be present in the midst of it all. All right, the human mind has a hard time with paradox, two opposite things being true at the same time. That's usually because we are in an either or, black and white, good or bad thinking mode all the time. Granted, most of the time it works, but when you get to the deeper truths, it starts to break down really fast. And we must hold these beliefs, these types of beliefs, much lighter. Should justice be administered? Absolutely. Should mercy be shown? Absolutely. Can both be done simultaneously? I think so, but it's difficult to see how. And this is where wisdom comes in. Wisdom is an ability to navigate the deeper issues that are not so easy to label and categorize. And today we have this paradox happening. Now, Dr. Chris Green, a theologian that I highly admire, talked about this passage today on his podcast this week. And he mentions that John's question, "Are you the one or should we wait for another?" is actually a critique of Jesus' actions, not just a "I'm doubting things." See, the blind are seeing. Well, that's great, but what good is it that the blind see if all they see is a man in soft robes in a royal palace administering injustice to God's people? Well, the deaf are hearing. Okay, that's great, but what good is it if all they hear are the decrees of Rome and the cry of the oppressed? Okay, the voiceless are speaking. Well, that's great. But what good is it if the powerful are silencing their cries as they soak up all the resources of the world? Now, if we're honest, we feel the same way too. John the Baptist wants an overhaul and reform of the evil systems of oppression. And if you read the prophetic writings from the Old Testament, that's what they ask for too. Amos said he wanted to see justice roll down like mighty waters. Isaiah said, away with your religious ceremonies that do nothing for the poor and oppressed. Micah called for the people to do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. Hosea called for the people to return to God by maintaining love and justice. Zechariah said to administer true justice and show mercy and compassion to one another. There are countless other verses, but I think you can see the point. Justice is a big deal to the prophets, and justice happens against those people, and love is shown to us. But Jesus says what many theologians say is Jesus' most difficult passage to interpret. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and violent people take it by force. Now, I am not the one to finally figure this out and shed all the light on it, but I can offer some pastoral reflections for this season of Advent. The wrath of God is not something that God wants to do to you, but something that God wants to reveal. There are lies that we cling to that diminish our worth and our value as humans, and these lies cause us to act violently and manipulatively to those around us. You see, our natural bent as humans is to make people understand us, make people love us, make people accept us. And we believe that if we persistently press upon others until we get what we want out of them, we will finally be loved. But this is violence. Our faith tells us a different way, to give away what it is we seek to have, and discover these things we desire in the act of giving itself, not in the act of getting. This is the shift that Jesus models in his life, death, and resurrection. Because when you finally have nothing to prove and nothing to earn, you are free to love. And this potency of life and love is powerful enough to defeat death and fierce enough to pursue us with the truth of our own goodness, worth, and value in this world. And when this kind of love catches you, you uncoil your defenses enough to pursue justice by means of compassion.
Now, I remember as a kid being asked to help paint a picnic table for a family friend. What I wasn't really clear on was that it was a way for me to earn some money for a church trip we were going on. But I just thought it was helping this guy out. He needed a picnic table painted, and I am here to do it, I guess. So there I was, painting this wooden picnic table. I remember it was black, and I was getting it all over my hair and my clothes and my face and everything. And the owner of this table was relaxing with a bottle of Coke in a cozy chair watching me. Now, I kept thinking, I wonder if he's going to get up and actually help me. This is his table after all. So I said, are you planning on helping at all? And he just said, nope, this is your job. Now remember, I didn't know it was a way to make money for a trip and that he was paying me, so I couldn't understand why he wasn't stepping in to help me out, because it was our job, and I was like 8. Now this is a common view of God as well, a distant figure of power who could help us out, but chooses to watch us toil away while he drinks a Coke, saying, well, this is for your own good. You can do it. Now this theology might help you out when your sufferings are light, day-to-day toil kind of stuff. But it makes God out to be unkind and uninterested in our emotional state. Like as if he's saying, suck it up, buttercup. Can you imagine treating your child in the same manner that we believe God treats us? This is why what we believe about God is so important. Not because it will save or condemn us, but because we will treat other people the way we perceive God is treating us. Then we can justify a lot of our own unkindness in the name of religion this way. But it is not the Christian theology of incarnation that believes God wraps up in human flesh to dwell among us. So at the end, God is named Emmanuel, which is translated, God is with us. So God is not the parent in the bleachers cheering us on. God is not the coach on the field that inspires us to work harder. God is not our teammates that plays alongside of us. God indwells our very flesh and blood, the muscle we toil with to get the work done, the exhausted brain we use to executive function our way through life, the blood pumping in our veins. to bring oxygen to our limbs, the emotions we feel as we experience love and loss, failure and success, joy and fear, pain and pleasure. God's love is a love in solidarity so close to us that our experience of life is God's as well. God feels with us, toils with us, believes with us, doubts with us, rejoices with us, cries with us, lives with us, and even dies with us. And by this indwelling God, we overcome in the end and find life. Thomas Merton says this in a poem about Advent, where he plays on that concept of there being no room in the inn when they are then diverted to the manger in the barn that they could sleep in. And he says this, he says, into this world, this demented inn in which there is absolutely no room for Christ at all, Christ comes uninvited. But because he cannot be at home in it, because he is out of place in it, and yet he must be in it, his place is with the others, for whom there is no room. His place is with those who do not belong, who are rejected by power, because they are regarded as weak. Those who are discredited, who are denied status of persons, who are tortured, bombed, and exterminated. With those for whom there is no room, Christ is present in this world. So know this, whatever you face, you do not face it alone, ever. God indwells the human experience and will overcome it all in you and through you and by you and for you and with you. You cannot lose or fail or die. In the end, Christ will redeem it all, every single thing, and make things right.
Now, one of my favorite TV shows is a British show called The Repair Shop. And the premise is that people bring their family heirlooms and antiques into these master craftsmen and women for restoration. Now, sometimes it's like a stuffed bear or a clock or a porcelain statue, an old chest of drawers, an antique toy, a leather jacket, anything old made of high quality material but fallen into disrepair. And then they get to work in the restoration project of cleaning, repairing, and restoring. And by the end, the item looks brand new again, and many tears are shed for the redemption of this valued family treasure. Now, the word traditionally associated with today is salvation, but I chose redemption to dodge all of the religious baggage of the previous word, and it's probably in closer proximity to the concept of salvation that the people of the New Testament would have known. We tend to make this word salvation all about the changing of a soul's post-mortem destination from damnation to heaven. But the word is more rooted in the concept of restoration seen in something like these repair shop items. It's about things being set right and restored to their intended state. Now, a culturally popular view of redemption is to conform ourselves into a pre-shaped mold of what culture, society, and those around us define as acceptable, good, and moral. Now, when it comes to a religious version of these, we can talk about these big concepts of hope, joy, peace, love, and redemption without embodying them. And this is the big mistake we can make, to assume that if we consider ourselves Christian in some fashion, we must be experiencing these things at all times as emotions and circumstances and experiences. Almost like our lives are aligning, like we're in some kind of a Hallmark movie. And we can get away with that mindset when the difficulty of life is just kind of the day-to-day hardships, and it might even be helpful, actually. But we can even use it to encourage positive changes, motivate us to try new things. But these larger concepts don't fit inside the small experiential packages. And then we can't see that they don't fit inside of there until life's difficulties become larger than the tool bag that we currently possess. And then, when that happens, we ask questions about the validity of our faith altogether. And we would be right to do so. Now, the great news is that you don't have to try and jam your life and perspective back into a box too small to hold it. There is room for your life as it is within Advent. Advent is not meant to fix you, conform you, or condemn you for not doing the latter too. Advent merely wants to accompany you from the place you now stand. There is no predetermined destination, and there's not even a predetermined pathway. It's a way of being meant to put you in right relationship with your own life and the world around you. Now, this right relationship is one of hope and joy and love and peace and eventually redemption. Not as emotions, but as a handrail to hold on to when the terrain beneath your feet becomes so harsh. Then you make the road forward by walking on it, but with a different stance, attitude, and posture. Now, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of room for that in our lives today, but there wasn't any room for Christ and his parents either in the world when he entered. They had to find refuge in a barn for his birth. And then the king of the region, Herod, felt threatened by his presence and attempted to kill him, so the family had to flee for Egypt for a long time as refugees. And they held tightly to hope and joy and peace and love as traveling essentials on their own unique and beautiful and treacherous journey to redemption. And we can too. So traveling mercies and Merry Christmas. Well, hey, thanks for joining us in our little best of compilation of our Advent series. I hope you've had a Merry Christmas, whether you're watching this on Christmas Eve or on Christmas Day. A little quick announcement next week. I'm not sure what our online is going to look like, so we'll see. We'll post a little something for you, but not a big shebang because we're in the holidays and I'm taking a little bit of a break. But we will see you sometime next week. Have a Merry Christmas. If you wanted to partner with us in a year-end giving or something like that, we'll still put the link down here on the bottom of your screen. You can go up there. Anything you can give to partner with us financially would be appreciated. All right, so peace out and Merry Christmas, and you're awesome, and you can do this, and you're not insufficient. It's just that hard. But fallen into disrepair over the years. Now the word, they get two word in the restoration project of cleaning. What the heck did I just write?